In this week's tutorial, I show you how to weather your props.
So to start the weathering process, of course, you actually need something worth weathering. And here I have a DC-15 Clone Trooper blaster, the standard blaster used by Stormtroopers and Clone Troopers alike. Here you can see it has a magazine that fits right into place, and once it's in there, it really looks the part. Of course, the barrel still has a bit of work to go, but it looks pretty good to me. And of course, I couldn't just make it like this. I wanted to make it more functional. So as you can see, this extends out and can actually be pinned in place with a screw. And then this hooks up, and there you have the bipod, which looks awesome. And mostly in the Clone Wars, the cartoon, and different things like that, it's mostly folded up. But if I really want, sometime in the future, I can mold and cast these and make them opening and functional. So onto this blaster. This one was made pretty much in the exact same way as the DC-17, last week's tutorial. Pew pew! And here you can see, here's the other side. It's pretty much identical except for these labels being here. And both of these have been coated with PVA or white glue. And that's just to help the paint stick better. This one was just painted a couple days ago, and something interesting I did is I got some plaster. And if you don't know what plaster is, it comes in like a white powder and you add water to it. Well, I got some plaster, put it on a piece of this very fine toilet paper. You'd also use kitchen wipes, and I rubbed it over all the surfaces, and then I wiped it off with this damp piece here, and it really helped make it look like this thing has seen some real action. But it still doesn't look like metal, so as I'm metallizing this and making it look like metal, I will also show you the weathering process and metallizing process of this blaster here. So just really quick, I have made some hand grips for this gun, and they do fit right in place, and they help kind of round out the handle a bit, and they also make it a little bit more comfortable to fit in your hand. These were made using a smaller printout of the hand piece. Here you can see it's definitely not the same size, but I somewhat used this and just scaled it down even more, lengthened it a bit, and I got this. So here you can see it's just a piece of cereal box cardboard, and it's been wrapped in this yellow fabric, which is actually yellow. It's this color, and it is like a stretchy sort of fabric. And that stuff, I have tons of it left over from my Reverse Flash costume, and I've just painted that with some brown acrylic paint and let it dry, and it has a nice texture to it. So now on to making these blasters look like metal. So there's several processes you could take. You could just dry brush some silver, which is what I'm going to do on this one, or you can try a new process on this one. So that's what I'm going to be showing you. So we're going to be painting this in an interesting way. So first of all, here's what you have to take into consideration. The idea of the weathering is that this is made out of metal, even though this isn't. And it's been painted over with some kind of oxidizing, anodizing, or just a painting process. Then, the paint has chipped off around the edges. Not on the surface, but mainly on the edges. This helps make it look like it's actually scratched, and it's seen some pretty bad stuff. Because the corners of things and the edges of things take a lot more action, or battle damage, as you may want to call it, than the deep crevices and flat areas of it. So these would be way more weathered than in here, because they're the thing that would be banging against stuff. That's the idea of weathering. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be getting one of these, painting it silver, painting it black, and sanding it with a sanding sponge to really get those edges to pop out themselves. But the only problem is, if we sand off the black, we'll most likely also sand off the silver. So today I'm going to be showing you an interesting process. So the first step is to paint it silver, and then paint it with 2 coats, or even 3, of this silver acrylic paint. Now, I don't use this stuff. You can. It's it's a very bright silver, so I like to use this. This is a Craftsman premium metallic paint. It looks much better for a Stormtrooper blaster. So I'll get back to you once I'm all done that. Here you can see it is all painted with that white, and if I bring you in closer, you can see it looks like a weapon straight out of the Hunger Games. I doubt that really matters, but it looks pretty cool. So of course we're going to be painting it with the silver paint you saw here a minute ago, this paint right here, and once I'm all done that, I'll be back once again. So now here you can see the blaster, and it actually kind of looks like something to do with Captain Phasma, because it's all silver, and it actually kind of looks like metal in the light. So next step we're going to do is we're going to seal it with white glue. The reason we do this is to protect the silver paint. You might be a little bit confused about why we're doing this, but when the time comes you'll understand why. So you want to give it 2 or maybe even 3 layers of white glue on all sides and all edges, And I would highly recommend you maybe even dry brush. Just make sure it gets on those edges because you do want to protect this silver paint. And you may not have noticed, but right before I did the silver paint, I put this barrel in, put a little bit of hot glue in there, and got some resin, which you really don't have to use. You could honestly just use air dry clay, which is what I partially used. And I just sculpted a bit of a barrel that I might actually paint green, just so then you can track it in film. And yeah. Also, one more thing, the hand grips have dried. They look perfect, but they are a little bright, especially for something like this. So I think I'm going to get some black paint, put it on these, and wipe it off just to let it kind of go into the surface texture. So here you can see we have the blaster, of course, and that silver has kind of gotten buffed out by the PVA glue, which is exactly what we want. And now the next step is going to be painting it with some black acrylic paint, and once we're all done, we'll go from there. So here you can see the blaster. Once again, it's got a somewhat even coat of the black paint, and that is purposeful because now we want to get a sanding sponge. This is just a piece of a cheap one from a dollar store, and the reason we want it to be very, very cheap is because the cheap ones are incredibly soft, and that'll allow us to take off the black paint but not take off the silver. So here you can see I just rubbed it right then and there, and that black paint came off and is going down to the PVA glue, which helps stop you from going further. And the PVA glue is on top of the silver, so all you need to do is do this on all of the edges, and it'll look really, really cool. So now, once we're all done with that, it looks pretty cool, it looks pretty scratched, but things don't just get scratched, they also get dirty. So now let's move on to some other colors. So the process of weathering is very, very simple. You get some dirt-colored paint, mix it up however you like, slather it all over the gun, and wipe it away using some toilet paper. Now once you're all done that, you may want to move on with more colors, and such as I'm going to do, with some burnt sienna and several other colors, and yeah. So here you can see the blaster, and of course I'll bring you as close as I can, and I have actually scraped off the paint of the orange tip, because I do want cops and, or should I say, police officers to know that I'm holding a prop weapon and not a real one. Of course, on that one, it can't even be considered as a real one. It's just such an odd shape. But maybe from a distance, I guess. But this one can be considered as, I don't know, like a Glock or something. I don't really know guns. So, here you can see I have the DC-17 blaster pistol, and I love this thing. It's beautiful. Of course, I'm going to leave the orange tip on and maybe just electrical tape it for film. But this is a beautiful prop, and I hope whoever makes this, please send me a photo. This thing is a beautiful prop if you make it right. So now we're going to move on to the DC-15. So this is just a replica I've made of the DC-15S blaster rifle, used by most clone troopers in the Clone Wars, the TV series, the cartoon, the animated cartoon series, and also in the movies. Very slightly. It's hard to see in a lot of the shots. This is basically a shorty version of the original DC-15 carbine blaster rifles. They're these big, 5-foot-tall weapons, and this is the shorty version, and I love how it's very compact, and it has a lot of features that I've somewhat included. So here you can see the folding stock does actually fold, but I do think I might just hold mine in place with the tiniest bit of hot glue. The rest of this was made completely out of cardboard. There's not one piece on this that isn't cardboard except maybe the metal sights, and there is some plaster in it just to give it a little bit of weight. But this whole thing was made completely out of cardboard for under $5 using white glue to assemble it. The reason I used white glue is because I really wanted to see how far I could push myself before I went insane without using my baby with my hot glue. So let's get into the weathering. So the weathering trick we're going to be using with this guy is called dry brushing. Dry brushing involves an incredibly dry brush. In fact, I'm drying this one out right now because it has a little bit too much moisture. And what we're going to do is I'm going to remove all these excess pieces, the little greeblets, and we're just going to work on the main bulk of this. So I have some silver acrylic paint, and I'm going to shake it up really, really good because I do want this to look like actual metal. and not like a gunmetal, because this paint, if you don't shake it up well, it will not blend on the inside. So now I'm going to put a drop on this card. And what you want to do is you want to dip your paintbrush in one, move it on to the next, paint that one, move it on to the next, make sure there's very little, and then go on to your blaster and literally just like have a little bit of fun with it. Go on the edges a little bit, and it'll instantly start weathering itself, basically. This part of the process requires very little effort. And you can already see, if I bring you in nice and close, that looks scratched on all of the edges, but not on the surfaces. So I've dry brushed all of the blaster, and it is just a truthfully life-changing experience, to be honest. Because as you apply the paint, you'll literally watch it transform from this cardboard thing you made into something that literally looks like metal, and it's happening right in front of your eyes. Here, I'll do some right now, and you'll notice it like instantaneously starts changing right now. It's the slightest amount of paint that really helps highlight all the work that you've done. Unlike this blaster, which is covered in dirt and stuff, I don't want to put any dirt on this because it's from a cartoon, and in the cartoon there's no dirt on them whatsoever. So I don't know how that happens, but that's what it looks like in the cartoon. So I'm going to start assembly on this. I'm just going to put the magazine in there for now, and I'll put a magnet in there someday. And then I'm going to start assembling this stock, like folding stock. And once that's all assembled, I'll check back in with you. So I screwed on all the hardware and added a little bit of hot glue for reinforcement, and this prop is pretty much done. What I love is that the hinges, when I hot glue these, didn't completely seal, so this is kind of moving, which is kind of something fun. This is the blaster, and this is the other blaster, and this has been the tutorial on how to weather your props.